We're back again. What's going on?
What's up, man?
Okay, for those on the radio, I got my boy Jeremiah Hermias Cooper here. And so when he and I were discussing relationships this morning, and what had happened is he had a pride problem. I had a pride problem. His life used to be all about him. My life would be all about me. When he met Jesus and I met Jesus, God is like, hey, it's not about you. It's about me. But now he's a director at Jail to Jobs. We'll discuss that a little bit later. And I'm a coordinator at Jail to Jobs. And so many people are asking him and have been asking him, tell me about you. We want to know about your story. And now lately, more people are saying to me, hey, I'm there for Jail to Jobs. I want to tell you about the youth. I want to tell you about the kids. I want to tell you how we're making a difference. I want to tell you, hey, you're welcome to become part of it. And they're like, we want to know about you. And so we were talking about that this morning, and I thought some of the things that we discovered about one another and about this time and this season would be good to help somebody. What do you think, Jay?
Yeah, no, I think that just what you're talking about, that's when I lived a selfish life, it was all about me. And so even when I got into this position, of course, when I met Jesus and stuff like that, it something transformed in me where I knew I could no longer be selfish or live that way. And then I had to understand, what selflessness looked like. But in order for me to move from one to the other, I had to really start thinking about, who I wanted to represent. Was I representing God? Was I representing me like I used to be, right? And so I was just in a very broken place in the past just because of who we once were as living in that selfishness. Or what God showed me, and a couple of pastors talked to me about, they're like, man, listen, you come from a broken place, right? And it's okay to talk about the broken place. But man, what's just as good as that or equally as impressive is the victory and where you're at today. And so I think for me, a lot of times what God put on, what God has impressed in my life is that in order for me to continue to move in the work that I'm doing, I have to start, I have to really remove myself from a lot of accomplishments. And what I mean by that is, it's very easy for people to get caught up in today's world about what they've been able to create, what they've been able to do. But here's what I also understand. As I meet people that understand what we're doing and they want to connect to it, it's great for them to hear our story, because then they understand the person behind the achievement. They understand that we were once this way, but who we represent now is totally different. Does that make sense?
It makes sense. It makes sense.
I think I'm not saying it the right way. So if I can just, let me just try to put it in perspective. Okay. So I used to live my life as a selfish man, correct? Now, whenever I came to help our youth here in Austin, I could no longer be that person. But what God taught me in that process is once I start understanding what humility was like, then I was able to operate in a selfless place, right? And so that keeps me in check all the time, just like I was telling you earlier. Even with the achievements going on, I know it's not me, but it's God through me. And I think for me, that's a very important piece, even though a lot of times I'm like, well, you don't have to know about my past, just know who I am as a man today, and that should be enough. But the reality of it is the climate of where we live today, the climate that we're in today, it's very relatable. Our story is very relatable because we were once in the thick of things. We were at the low point in our lives. And so when people want to learn about us, that's where the attachment comes in at. The relatability piece, the relationship part, because even though they say it or not, they've struggled and they want to know, well, how did you as a man who struggled come out of it? They might still be in the thick of things, right? And they're still trying to figure out how to work out themselves out of it. So I don't know if that any of that made sense.
No, it made sense. It's just the reason that I found your perspective so interesting, because we're in the same place, meaning you were uncomfortable with sharing, I was uncomfortable with sharing, different reasons, but same point. Why are we uncomfortable? Because we don't want to promote self.
Right. Yes.
And so for me, what happened is when I was hired by the organization, my first mindset is I want to add value to Jail to Jobs, whatever they're doing. And so when I'm having a meeting, whether it was happenstance at the gym or whether somebody was like, hey, you work for Jail to Jobs, tell me about it. My focus at first is I've got to tell you about this great organization. I've got to tell you what I've seen when I've been able to interact with the youth. I want to tell you how that tied into my past life, so to speak. But I did not highlight my past life. I just make reference and say, well, I understand. I find it easy to talk to different youth who are chasing money.
Right.
Or different youth who are like, I'm so disappointed that my esteem level is like here. If
Right.
normal is 0, I'm like at -10. And I said, okay, I understand. Let's talk. But what I found out, people would inevitably ask me the question, tell me a little bit about your past.
Right.
And then I hesitate because I know it's like when we were at that fundraiser and I'm up there sharing. And I said, after serving over 27 years, I saw a lady literally in the middle of the crowd. She's like, oh my God.
Right.
She was
right.
like, and they're like, wait a minute. And I'm looking around because I look at people. I'm not
Right.
giving them a courtesy look. I'm looking, but she's still stuck on, he just said 27 years. And so
Right.
when people hear that, and you say, well, why do you have to say 27 years? Because if I say I was incarcerated, the next question is generally how long? So I just say it all together. And they're like, what has been the hardest part of you re-entering society? And at that moment, I'm like, this is not about me. I want to let you know about the youth. And I'm coming to understand that it's not that they don't care about the youth, but just like you said, they're like, how can you have gone through that and help anybody?
Right.
If anything, from their perspective, a lot of times, you need help.
Yeah.
And what I conveyed to them, now you're getting into the fact that I'll share about me. I've received a lot of help. I've received help to learn different things. And even on the staff meeting today, you guys have helped me learn a lot. And I just automatically give that back. But I found that I need to give more. And so of me, because my mindset was if we have a 30-minute conversation and I spend 13 minutes talking about me, but I only spend 12 minutes speaking about Jail to Jobs, I feel like I've done a disservice to Jail to Jobs.
Right.
That was my mindset. But I found out that if I spend 14 minutes talking about me and 1 minute saying, this is what I believe in, this is who I believe in, that's what sometimes the conversation becomes. And so I'm learning that, and I'm like, oh,
Well,
okay.
But just think about it. There's a fascination of why or how somebody can be so broken and then, rise from that. There's a people, they want to understand. Our world, the world that we lived in, the reality of it is a lot of people have never lived in that world. So we've lived, and the way I look at it, we've lived in two different worlds. We lived in prison, that's a world in itself, and obviously out here, right? And people are so intrigued about how somebody can come out of prison and be successful, right? Because they don't understand that world. And it's like this, whenever I would pull people into prison to go in as volunteers, and they would go in as the first time, you've had many experiences like this, they go in there thinking that they're going to be the ones, testifying to these people that are locked up, or they're going to be the ones that are blessing these people by going in there and sharing themselves with them. But then it's never failed that once they leave there, it's the exact opposite. They feel that they've been blessed. They feel that they've received something different. They to the point where they're like, man, well, how could I be a part of this? What more can I do to help? And I think that's a benefit for us to have that in our life, because it gives people hope out here that transformation is real, redemption is real. To some people, it's just a word, but to actually see living proof of it is something totally different. And I think that a lot of people see that in ourselves. And so when you talk about, when you give yourself to these, to people so they can understand the man behind Yellow Jobs, I think that to them is the attraction. Well, how is somebody that has been broken in the system, how are they being victorious in their lives today? And so I can almost guarantee you that story doesn't die there with them. They're living through your experience vicariously. I think that's the word.
That's it.
And I think that in itself not only helps our population of people, but it also helps theirs. And so, yeah, man.
No, that's
big
great.
deal.
That's great. Let me pivot.
Okay.
When we speak about pride and
Yeah.
we speak about humility, give me one. I'll go first. One
Yeah.
thing that I thought was a good thing about pride. This is what I thought was a good thing about pride. Pride helped me to be able to walk in an identity, although it wasn't truly me, it was the me that I presented to others. And so when I was faced with the fact I need to get rid of pride, in other words, believing that I am number one and it's all about me, one of the things I faced was, well, who am I without the pride?
Right.
And
Yeah.
so when God was ministering to me to break that relationship that I had with pride, that was a question that just hounded me. And that's a question that when I'm speaking to a lot of other individuals who are walking in pride, I'll say, don't be afraid to let the pride go, because there's a better you.
Yeah.
But that's easy to say.
Right.
But when I revert back to my mindset, I'm like, well, pride helps me walk into a room and A, B, and C. Pride helps me be able to do these things. If I give up the pride, what am I gonna stand on to
Yeah.
be able to do that? Well, for me, pride was replaced with humility. That humility came in the form of Jesus Christ. And so the one thing that I would say I used to think pride helped me with, which is being this person and accomplishing things, it really wasn't good. And I would like anybody that's watching or listening to know that if you have reached a point where you know that pride is hurting you and you are fearful of who am I as an individual without that pride, I'm telling you that you're a better person, because selfishness, and I want to make this analogy, there's a body of water called the Dead Sea.
Right.
And what happens is things flow into that sea. When they come in, there's living.
Right.
But I believe it's because of the salt, and it doesn't leave, it's dead. Well, one of my favorite words is reciprocity. And so when everything is coming in my life and it's about me, it's about me, it's about me, but I'm not pouring out, then that's a lot of dead weight. That's a lot of dead relationships. That's a lot of dead feelings. But when I gave up the pride, now I'm able to give back.
Yeah.
And so what's something you thought was good about pride
Yeah.
that hindered you a little bit from breaking that relationship with it?
So it carried me. It carried me majority of my life. And I think for me, what combated the fear that I was living with at a young age was being prideful of who I had become. And because of that pride, I entered into spaces where, you know, I just felt like there was nothing attached to me that I couldn't let go of right away, just because of the person who I had become. That pride took me to that place where it really didn't matter if we kicked it all the time or not. You know what I'm saying? I felt like I didn't have to have you next to me regardless. I can do it on my own.
Right.
But that's what helped me combat the fear that I had been growing up with for so long. And so I lived in that space. And so I hurt a lot of people. I destroyed a lot of relationships and burnt a lot of bridges. And not to get too deep, but that turned me into a jack boy. And so because of my pride, I would jack my own friends. And they lived in a space, they were in a space where they were like, man, we can't even kick it with Jeremiah anymore because he's liable to do whatever. But I can tell you it was because of the pride that was in me that destroyed so many things around me. And so because I knew that wholeheartedly, that was what destroyed my life. When I got saved, and when I told God, like, God, listen, you take the wheel. I can't do this on my own. If you open the door, I'm going to walk through it. It's because I was relinquishing at that moment pride. I said, God, because how do you a person that's full of pride, how do you say, I'm going to give it all to you? A person with pride says, I can handle everything myself. So when I did that, for the first time in my life, God showed himself. He revealed himself to me. And so even in my situations today, and I think we were talking about this earlier, when I see things happening because I'm putting in the work, or I have to recognize, like, bro, that's not you doing it.
That's right.
Because when I step into that space again, dude's still back there, man. The dude that was prideful and burned all the bridges, he's still back there. You know what I'm saying? I can give him some attention, or I can really acknowledge who's putting me in that position. And when I do that, it always keeps me on my toes of not falling back into that pattern. So I could say this, and you're absolutely right. Humility takes place of the pride. And then when humility comes, you understand how to be selfless opposed to selfish. And then I'm able to help, I'm able to pour in, and God fills me up, and he puts people around me to fill me up that have had those same kind of issues.
That's right. That's right.
Because let's not forget, narcissism is right up there with the pride thing. You know what I'm saying? They run hand in hand. So yeah, man, that's, I guess, and just to finish it off, that's why God has us exactly where we're at. Right? Because we know how to move forward, right? But we've replaced pride with humility, and with that humility comes a selflessness.
There you go.
Yeah.
My final question.
Yeah.
The humility that replaced pride.
Mm-hmm.
What is one quality that you gained from having a good relationship with humility? For me, it was being able to learn from others. Humility, and when I say humility, people say, what is humility? Humility is bowing low. Humility is taking the back seat. And literally what that means is we're talking right now, but I'm not at the forefront like, yeah, I gotta look good and I gotta do this and the camera's gotta do this. I'm sitting in the back seat and I'm holding a conversation. I'm holding the conversation from a place where God lead me, guide me, even when I think I know what he's gonna say. No, listen attentively. And so humility has enabled me to be able to learn from others. And that has been one of the best things that my relationship with humility has given me.
And the only reason why I know this is right on point, man, is because that's what it is for me. It's being teachable.
Okay.
At my age, a lot of you hear that expression, old dogs can't learn new tricks, things like that, right? But for me, humility is put me in a space of being teachable. And I think that that's another reason why, I am where I am today, is because if I didn't have men come behind me and mentor me, and I didn't accept that, I wouldn't be here, bro. I wouldn't be here. So being teachable definitely is something, something that's real.
Jail to Jobs. Check out the website. Closing comments?
I'm good.
All right, appreciate it.
Stay humble, man.
Stay humble. All right.
All right.